Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime and makeup episode. Today I've got an absolute doozy of a case. Today I'm going to be covering the case of Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, also known as the Moor's murderers. Now listen, I just want to say, when I started my channel I vowed that I wouldn't do child cases because they're too painful, they're too hard, and it's just completely devastating. Then I realised that this is exactly why myself and other creators, we should be covering these cases. We should keep them at light, because people like Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, they still exist to this day, and they are still attacking and preying on these young vulnerable children, and we need to be aware that this still happens so we can do more to stop it. I always say, if my channel gets to the heights that I want it to get to, if I can grow it, I want to work with charities, foundations. I want to be able to give money so serial killers can be identified, and so victims' bodies can be identified and given back to their families, or to provide justice and closure to families. That is the whole reason why I make these videos, and if it is hard and if it is devastating, it still needs to be done. Before we go any further, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to my channel. Put on the notification bell so you don't miss when I upload, which is every Wednesday and Sunday at 7:30 British Standard Time. Any details of what I've used on my face today will be in the description below, alongside my social media handles if you want to give them a follow there. But ultimately, just make sure you subscribe to the channel. But without any further rambling and any further ado, let's get into the case of the Moor's murderers. So, Ian Brady was born Ian Duncan Stewart on January the 2nd, 1938, and he was born in the Gorbals area of Glasgow. Another Scottish sickle, we seem to have so many. It infuriates me. Now, Brady was born to Margaret Peggy Stewart. She's referred to Peggy a lot, so I'm just going to go by Peggy. And his father is actually unknown. They don't know who his father was, although Peggy did claim that Brady's father was a news reporter who had worked at a newspaper and died 3 months before he was born. But no one was able to corroborate this, whether it was true or whether Peggy was just trying to make herself look better, because I suppose it was that time where if you didn't know the father of your baby, kind of looked down upon back then. Now, of course, due to Brady's father being unknown, Peggy really struggled to make ends meet. I mean, she's one woman, she works as a waitress, it's not really a great pay. So she decides that the best thing for Ian at this point is to be given away to a couple called Mary and John Sloan. They were a local couple in the area, and they already had 4 children of their own. So she thought it would be better, someone who's financially stable, and also he would get some siblings from it as well. Now, at the age of 9 years old, Brady had taken a trip to Loch Lomond with his family, and it was at this point that he realised his great love for the great outdoors. He just loved being in the wild, the wilderness, with nature. It was something he really enjoyed. Now, various authors would later state that Brady was very much into torturing animals, and Brady, he objected these claims like nothing else. Like, he was fine to admit that he murdered small children, but the animals is where he drew the line. Really? Now, it was actually said that Ian Brady had killed a cat just aged 10. It's said that he stoned dogs and he cut off rabbits' heads, and that he had also burnt a cat alive. Like, burned it alive. Like a disgusting, vile human being. Now, I hate having to say this about these sick individuals, but apparently Brady was quite the clever cookie at school, and he was accepted to Shawlands Academy, which was basically a school for above average pupils. However, just because you can be academically gifted does not mean that you have street smarts. Brady, whilst he was at Shawlands Academy, he would wind up in juvenile detention twice for housebreaking. Now, he actually left the academy at the age of 15, just couldn't quite hack it, couldn't behave, and he went to work as a tea boy at a shipyard in Govan. And 9 months later, he had gotten a job as a butcher's messenger, and he even got himself a little girlfriend, Evelyn Grant. However, Evelyn would end up having to break up with Brady because he threatened her with a switchblade, like a pocket knife, pen knife, whatever you call it where you're from, but one of those little knives. He threatened her with one of those, all because she danced with another boy. Which, like, listen, dancing with another boy, yeah, it would sting to see it. Is it worth bringing in a switchblade? No. Now, Brady had then went on to appear in front of the court with 9 charges against him. Now, after his 17th birthday, he was placed on probation with the condition that he had to live with his mother, Peggy. Now, at this point, Peggy was living in Manchester, so she had moved away. She married an Irish fruit merchant by the name of Patrick Brady. And Patrick would go on to get Ian Brady a job as a fruit porter at Smithfield Supermarket, and then Ian had went on to take Patrick's surname, Brady. Now, if I was Paddy, all those years later, I'd be like, oh damn, really wish I hadn't given up the surname to you. Like, let me tell you something. Ian Brady is really going to bring down the Brady family name. He is an absolute monster. Now, within just a year of moving to Manchester, Brady was sent to Strangeways for 3 months after he was caught trying to steal lead seals from a supermarket and then trying to smuggle them out of said market. So he was sent away. Now, because Brady was still under the age of 18, he was sentenced to 2 years in Borstal, which is like a youth detention centre, and he was sent there for training. So he was sent to Latchmere House in London and then Hatfield, Borstal. Now, during this time, Ian Brady was found drunk on an alcohol that he had made himself. So, like, made himself up a little bit of moonshine, and like, we know how dangerous moonshine is. And if you don't, there's a saying that moonshine can make your eyes go blind. Yeah, dangerous stuff. But he was caught doing this, so he was sent away to a tougher unit in Hull. Now, on November the 14th, 1957, Brady would be released, and it was at this point that it appeared that he had come to a turning point himself, okay? He was doing a bit of a U-turn on life, and he just wanted to better himself at this point, apparently, right? So he had actually obtained a set of manuals on bookkeeping, and he would study this consistently. Like, at one point, he was just holed up in his room, locked in, studying away, and his parents were shocked at the dedication that he was displaying. I mean, they've never seen this from Brady before. Maybe he was going to turn his life around. Shock horror. He was not. However, his, personal studies had somewhat paid off, because in January of 1959, Ian Brady was offered a clerical job at Millward's Merchandising, and this place was like a chemical distribution company, and it was based in Gorton. Now, Brady still very much liked to read, and his favourite books to read was Teach Yourself German. Love that. New life skill for him. But then it gets a bit sus when his other favourite book is Mein Kampf. If you've done history in school, you know exactly what that book is. And the other ones that he would like to read was anything that was based on Nazi atrocities. Yeah. So now we're going to go on to talk about the second spawn of Satan. Yeah, Myra Hindley. I hate this woman. I hate them all. So Myra Hindley, she was born in Crumpsall on the 23rd of July 1942, and she was born to Nellie and Bob Hindley. Now, Myra was actually raised in Gorton, which at this point was a working class area of Manchester. Now, Myra Hindley's father, he was an abusive alcoholic. He would abuse his wife and his children, and the conditions at home were just not ideal to be living in. I mean, Myra herself, she slept in a single bed at the side of her mum and dad's double bed. Like, there was just not enough space. And then when Myra's younger sister Maureen was born in 1946, the living conditions only deteriorated further. I mean, there is not enough space for all these children. Now, due to the lack of space and the bad conditions, the following year when Myra was 5 years old, she was sent to live with her grandmother. Now, a brief little bit of background on Bob Hindley, Myra's dad. He had actually served with the Parachute Regiment. He had been stationed in North Africa, Cyprus and Italy during the World War. Now, he was known to be extremely tough and he expected nothing less from Myra. He expected her to be as tough as he was, even as a child. And with that, he expected that Myra should be able to stick up for herself and defend herself. So one day, a boy who was 8 years old, he had basically, scratched or hit Myra and it actually drew blood on her cheek. Now, it was really sore and obviously she was scared, as you would be as a little girl. She did what any other little girl would do. She ran to her dad for comfort and reassurance, and all she got from her father was a threat. He said to her, if she doesn't go back and stick up for herself by fighting that boy, he will leather her himself. Now, for anyone not in the area or who doesn't really use the term leather, it means to, batter someone. To fight them, basically. So this dad's threatening to batter or fight his young daughter, who's went crying to him for help. So with this, Myra thinks she has no other choice. She goes back to find the 8-year-old boy and she scored her first victory, as she would call it, because she was able to knock down this boy in a few punches. And she was proud of herself, but even more so, her dad was proud of her. So this instills in Myra's brain at this early age that violence is okay. Violence is something that you can be proud of, as is hurting others. Like, come on. Now, in 1957, one of Myra's best friends, 13-year-old Michael Higgins, he had invited Myra to go swimming at a reservoir with him and his friends. Now, Myra had declined the invite. She was going elsewhere. And she's getting on with her day when she hears the devastating news that Michael Higgins had drowned in the reservoir that he went swimming in. Now, Myra said that she felt a deep sense of guilt and almost like she was responsible because Myra herself was a very strong swimmer and she seemed to think that, if she had been there, maybe she would have been able to save Michael. Which, that's a lot of guilt for a child to carry. Obviously it's not their fault for choosing to go somewhere else and a reservoir is not safe anyway. And even if she had been there, there's nothing to say that she would have been able to save him, regardless of being a strong swimmer. Now, Myra's first job was a junior clerk in an engineering firm. She, would run errands, make tea, she would type up some work, and at this point, she was a well-liked individual. She got on with the job and she was friendly to everyone. She became friends quite quick with the people that she worked with. And she was well-liked enough that when she lost her first wage packet, the office had teamed together to put a collection in place so they could replace her wage for her. What? And also, how do you lose a full wage packet? Come on. Responsibility. And I have to say, I always find these cases so fascinating that someone can start off as well liked and seem to be thought quite highly of, to then go on and do the things that they do and be the worst members of society. Fascinates me. Now, at the age of 17, Myra ends up getting engaged to a young man that she meets. They seem quite happy at first, but then as time goes on, Myra's like, do you know what? You're just a bit too immature for me. I need a mature older man to take care of me. So she ends up breaking off the engagement. All I can say is thank God for that guy because God knows what would have happened to him if he had stayed with her. Now, after this, Myra starts taking judo lessons. Yeah. She's really want to brush up on those martial arts skills because you just never know when you're going to have to use them. Now, at the judo class, people wouldn't even want to spar with her, that sort of practicing that you do, because apparently she wouldn't loosen her grip quickly enough when you were instructed to. It's almost like she just loved that extra squeeze, she loved to inflict the pain. If she rocked up at my judo class, not that I do judo, I don't think I could, if she rocked up, I would leave. Although if I knew who she was and what she did, I'd probably try and fight her a wee bit, but might get myself in a sticky situation. Now I know that you're all thinking, Anna, when does the love story between Satan's offspring begin? We're getting there. In January of 1961, 18-year-old Myra gets a clerical job at Millwards. Who works there? Brady. The minute that Myra met Ian Brady, she was infatuated with him. She was obsessed with him. And in the beginning, Ian Brady knew this, but he wasn't interested in Myra, and she would do whatever she could to get his attention. Now, Myra begins keeping a diary, and she is actually detailing in great detail her obsession to Ian Brady and how much she's lusting after him. Now, her and Ian, they only ended up speaking on July the 27th, and from there until December the 22nd, when Ian Brady finally asked her out, she just further detailed her utter obsession with him. Now, on their first date, they went to a movie together. Oh no. They went to watch a movie about the Nuremberg trials, and Ian Brady had told Myra Hindley about his fascination with Nazi atrocities, and on their lunch breaks they would read to each other. Now, it wasn't like It Ends With Us, like the latest Colleen Hoover. It was Nazi atrocity stories. Yeah. Now, Myra, she wants to be as good as she can for Ian, right? So she drastically changes her look to the Aryan ideal. So she bleached her hair, which can I just say is god awful. God awful. If a hairdresser did that, they need sued immediately because it's terrible. But I'm reckoning it was probably a botched job by Myra herself. But she had this like bleach blonde hair. She started wearing really dark eye makeup and this like deep red lipstick. Like she thought that she was this, you know, and she wasn't. She looked terrible. Now, at this point as well, she's like changing up her whole style. So she's wearing leather jackets, she's wearing like knee to thigh high boots, short skirts, just fishnets, you know, this whole vibe that just didn't suit her at all. Now, at this point, both herself and Ian Brady, they become less sociable with their work colleagues. So she's no longer this fun, friendly person. She's withdrawn, isolated, and honestly just not a person you want to get close to. Now, even before Myra Hindley had passed her driving test, she would hire like a big van, and whilst they were driving around in this van, like Bonnie and Clyde, they would plan bank robberies and things that they could do together, especially crimes. Now, Myra, she had actually went on to befriend a man who was the president of a gun rifle range. Now, she attended this range and the man had basically arranged for Myra to buy a .22 caliber rifle, and this would be from a gun merchant in Manchester. Bad idea. BADIDEA _bold. Now, it was around this point that Ian Brady himself became very interested in photography, which again could have been a great utilised life skill. He could have made a career out of photography, but no, he would use it for sadistic reasons. Now, he actually owned a brown box which he would use to take photos of Myra Hindley and her dog. He then went on to purchase a more sophisticated model, and he got himself some, you know, fancy lighting and darkroom equipment. Now, the couple, they would go on to take photos of each other, and in this day and age they were considered racy and explicit. I don't want to see them. Now, on the 12th of July 1963, Ian Brady came to Myra Hindley and he told her, "I want to commit the perfect murder." Now, he had instructed Myra after work she would rent out one of the vans like she normally does, and they were going to drive around. So Myra was going to be in the van, and then Brady was going to follow behind on his motorcycle and flash his headlights to Myra in the mirror when he seen what he believed was a perfect victim. These victims would be children, okay? Innocent children who cannot fight back, who can barely look after themselves, who are so innocent and have their whole life ahead of them. This to him was the perfect victims. Now, I'm going to do my best not to get upset today, okay? Because like, you know, I get a bit emotional, and this is TMI, but it's TOM, and I'm feeling emotional and in pain. So bear with. So this day they are driving down Gorton Lane and Ian Brady sees a young girl who he believes is the perfect first victim. So he flashes his lights to Myra to signal her to pull over and, you know, entice the victim into her van. However, Myra actually ignores this signal from Brady because she recognises this little girl. This little girl was an 8-year-old neighbour of her mother. However, it would be later that day when Ian Brady spotted 16-year-old Pauline Reid that everything would change. So it was around 7:30 p.m. and they were driving down Froxmere Street, and this is when Ian Brady signalled to Myra Hindley to pull over because he had spotted Pauline Reid. Now, Pauline Reid was actually a schoolmate of Myra's younger sister Maureen. At this point in time, Pauline Reid was on her way to a dance. She was dressed up and she was excited, not knowing what was going to happen to her this day. So Hindley, she pulls up alongside Pauline and she offers Pauline a lift. Pauline, of course, recognises Myra. She is friends with her sister, or at least a classmate of her sister's, and she agrees to the lift. Now, when she's in the van with Myra, Myra says, you know, like, I'm giving you a lift. Do you mind if we can go to Saddleworth Moor? I've actually lost an expensive glove of mine. If you can help me find it and then I'll drop you off. Pauline Reid, being the nice, kind, caring person that she was, she agreed to help Myra look for her glove. Now, I do apologise if this seems obvious, but I just want to confirm for you guys that there is in fact no glove to be found. Obviously, this is just a ruse by Myra to get Pauline Reid to the Saddleworth Moor. So they drive to the moors and of course Brady is following behind. So they get to the moors and when Brady pulls up, Myra says, oh, like, don't worry, I know him. He's just here to also help search for the glove. Now, Myra Hindley would later state that she waited in the van and Ian Brady accompanied Pauline Reid to the moor. She had then said that he returned around 30 minutes later by himself, no sight of Pauline Reid. When Myra notices that Pauline's not there, she basically asks Brady, you know, what's happened to her. And apparently Brady takes her to the spot where he killed Pauline, and Pauline's clothes were all in disarray and she was nearly decapitated by 2 large wounds to her throat, and this included a 4-inch incision right across her voice box. And then when Myra had asked Brady if he had raped Pauline, he said, of course I raped her. Now let me just reiterate to you guys, this is Myra's account. She's saying that she wasn't there when Pauline was murdered, right? This is what she later told police. So bear that in mind because it's a bunch of bull, to be honest. Now, according to Myra, apparently she sat with Pauline's body whilst Brady went to go and get like a shovel that he had placed in the field earlier. Premeditation, he was prepared for this murder. And then when he came back, Myra said that she went back to the van and she sat there whilst Brady buried the body of Pauline Reid. Now, if we flip it around and we discuss what Brady said, he said Myra was very much present for the murder, and not only that, she took part in the sexual assault of Pauline Reid. She was no innocent bystander, and honestly, I don't believe a word that comes out either of their mouths, but I feel like in this case, I'm going to go with Brady's version. And then we come to the evening of November the 23rd, 1963. At a market in Ashton-under-Lyne, Ian Brady had spotted 12-year-old John Kilbride, and Brady and Hindley, they offer 12-year-old John Kilbride a ride home. Brady says, you know, it's really late, like your parents wouldn't want you out this late, they're going to be getting worried about you. We'll take you home and we'll get you a bottle of sherry on the way. Once they got into Myra's hired Ford car, Brady had then told 12-year-old John that they were going to have to make a detour on the way to his house because Myra had lost a glove on the moor and it was very expensive, so they needed to find it. Now apparently John agrees, they arrive at the moor and Brady takes John away to look for the glove, whilst Myra apparently sits in the van. Now whilst they were there, Brady had went on to sexually assault 12-year-old John, and he attempted to slit his throat with a 6-inch serrated blade before then strangling John with either a shoelace or a bit of string. Now, Shortly afterward, he buried John in a shallow grave, and he had brought Myra over with the dog. They had stood on top of the shallow grave that John had been buried in, and Ian Brady photographed Myra Hindley and her dog on John's grave, and it was quite clear in this photo that the ground was recently disturbed. You could tell that it had recently been dug up. On the 16th of June 1964, Myra Hindley had asked 12-year-old Keith Bennett to help her load some boxes into her mini pickup. And at the time she had asked Keith for this help, he was on his way home to his grandmother's house. Now, Myra had said to Keith, you know, if you're able to help me load these boxes in, I will then drop you off at your grandmother's house and you'll get there quicker and you'll have helped me as well. Good deed done for the day. Now, young Keith, he was a helpful little boy and he wanted to help Myra, so he did decide to help with the boxes and then accept the lift from her. Now, what he didn't know is that Ian Brady was hiding in the van. Now, Myra Hindley, she had drove to a lay-by on Saddleworth Moor and she had, you know, done the same spiel. The glove was missing, it was expensive, she wanted the glove returned, could he help her? And apparently Brady had went off with Keith Bennett to search the moor. And just like the first time, 30 minutes later, Ian Brady returns. He is without Keith Bennett and he's carrying a spade. When he gets back in the van, he tells Myra Hindley that he sexually assaulted Keith and that he had then strangled him with string. Now, on December the 26th, 1964, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, they had went to visit a fun fair in Ancoats, and this is apparently when they seen 10-year-old Leslie Ann Downey all by herself. Now, they walk by Leslie Ann Downey and they deliberately drop some shopping right in front of her, and they act as though they're struggling with all their shopping, and they ask if Leslie Ann Downey could accompany them to their car with the shopping and then to Wardlebrook Avenue. Leslie Downey, again, she was a kind little soul. She was an absolute sweetheart and she would not watch anyone struggle, and so she agreed to go with Ian Brady and Myra Hindley and help them. Now, once they got to the house on Wardlebrook Avenue, Leslie Ann Downey was stripped, gagged and forced to pose for nude photographs before being brutally raped and killed by Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. Now, it was also possible that she had also been strangled with a piece of string, and the thing about Leslie Ann Downey's murder is that there was actually a recording of it. It was recorded on like a reel-to-reel audio tape, and both Ian Brady and Myra Hindley's voices could be heard on this tape whilst Leslie Ann Downey screamed and begged for mercy. Now, yet again, Myra Hindley and her bull lies. She says that she was in the house and she had went to run a bath, and when she returned from running her bath, Leslie Ann Downey was lying there dead. How big's your bath, Myra? Because obviously the bath does not run as long as a murder takes. Absolute idiotic woman, on not a single brain cell on. Lights on, nobody home. Now, Leslie Ann Downey's body would remain in that home overnight, and in the morning, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley drove her out to Saddleworth Moor, and she was still naked. She hadn't been covered. They buried her naked body on the moor, and they had put her clothes in with her at the bottom of her feet. Now, thankfully, we will be talking about the downfall of these horrific monsters, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, and their downfall would begin when they moved into Hindley's grandmother's house. Now, the couple had become close with Myra Hindley's brother-in-law, David Smith, and one night, David Smith had come over to the house at the request of Ian Brady. Now, the reason for the visit was apparently to collect wine bottles. Now, it's worth mentioning that David Smith was kind of in awe of Ian Brady. He thought he was quite cool, he had his together, all of that, so he would really do anything that Ian Brady asked him to. Now, whilst David Smith was over collecting these wine bottles, he would witness the brutal beating of Edward Evans, who was a 17-year-old boy. He was being beat brutally by Ian Brady before being axed to death. David Smith has witnessed and heard this. Now, at first, David Smith had originally agreed to help Myra Hindley and Ian Brady get rid of Edward Evans's body in the morning. So he's agreed to this, and I don't know, is it out of fear because his life might be in danger if he says no, or is it just the fact that he worships the ground that Ian Brady walks on? However, David Smith, he heads home, and he gets home around 3 a.m. when his wife, Maureen, Myra's younger sister, is still awake and asks him, is everything okay? He says it is, and he asks if she could make him a cup of tea. So Maureen goes ahead and she makes David Smith a cup of tea, and whilst he's sitting at the table to drink his tea, he vomits everywhere. It must be, the guilt and also the shock that is setting in, and he tells Maureen exactly what he's seen and also what he's agreed to. And it's Myra Hindley's sister that tells David Smith that he has to go to the police. So around 6:10 a.m. the next morning, David Smith armed himself with a screwdriver and he headed off to a local phone box so he could phone the police. Now, he had armed himself because he was worried that Ian Brady might suspect that he would tell on him and might intercept him before he gets to the phone box. Luckily, he never, and once he had phoned them and explained to the police, what's happened, he was then picked up in a police car and brought into the station. Now, on October the 7th, it was originally just Brady who was being arrested. However, after they were able to uncover a mass amount of evidence, they arrested Myra Hindley on October the 11th. Now, at first, the pair of them, they are maintaining their innocence and also the innocence of each other. They're saying that they didn't do it and there's no way that the other person could have done it. However, because they had been tipped off by David Smith, they were able to find a suitcase near the railway which contained photographs of their victims, as well as that awful recording of Leslie Ann Downey's torture. Now, they also searched through Myra Hindley's belongings, through her diaries, through her notebooks, and they found John Kilbride's name written on her notebook multiple times. Now, of course, whilst the police are searching through the evidence, they find photos of Myra Hindley and Ian Brady on Saddleworth Moor. This then leads to them doing a very extensive search of the moor, where they uncover the body of Leslie Ann Downey and John Kilbride. They were then charged with 3 counts of murder. Now, somehow, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, they would only admit to the murders of Keith Bennett and Pauline Reed, and Myra Hindley even took the police to the moors where Pauline Reed and Keith Bennett had been buried. So they were able to uncover Pauline Reed's body, but devastatingly, Keith Bennett's body was never found. Now, following the conviction, Ian Brady was moved to HM prison in Durham and he requested to spend his time in solitary confinement. Now, Ian Brady, he would spend 19 years in a mainstream prison before he was diagnosed as a psychopath in 1985. He was then moved to high security Park Lane Hospital, which is now known as Ashworth Hospital, I believe. Now, it was agreed by the judge and the Home Secretaries at the trial that a life sentence for Ian Brady should mean life. He should not be out of prison during his lifetime. He should die in prison. After receiving end-of-life care, Ian Brady would die at Ashworth Hospital due to a restrictive pulmonary disease, and this was on May the 15th, 2017. So he got to live quite a long life despite taking the lives of innocent children who barely lived a life at all. Also, I'm going to be absolutely honest here, the fact that he even received end-of-life care just sets me off. Like, he should have suffered, in my opinion. Now, whilst incarcerated in Holloway prison, Myra Hindley would frequently write to Ian Brady until 1971, where she basically called it quits on the relationship. They had sporadic contact over the next several months, but ultimately that came to an end when Myra Hindley fell in love with one of the prison guards, Patricia Cairns. Now, Patricia Cairns must have reciprocated the love that Myra had to offer, because Patricia tried to help Myra and Maxine Croft escape from prison. Now, luckily, this escape failed and Patricia Cairns was sentenced to 6 years in prison. What an absolute doughball. What a dummy. Like, do you not know what she's done, or do you know what she's done and you still find her attractive? sick. Now, at some point, Myra Hindley, she was transferred to Durham Prison, which is around 250 miles away from the prison that Ian Brady was held in. On November the 15th, 2002, Myra Hindley was 60 years old when she died from respiratory failure. And this was on the back of her suffering from several heart and lung conditions. And honestly, I hope she suffered. I hope she suffered. People like Ian Brady and Myra Hindley are just the most monstrous people that we will ever hear about, and although it pains me to talk about them and discuss them, I just want to make sure that everyone still remembers these victims who lost their lives at their hands, but also remember them for the kind of people that they were, not how they were taken from this world, because each and every one of these children, they were loved, they were someone's daughter, they were someone's son, they had loving family, loving friends, and they had so much to look forward to in their future. All of them were described as kind, sweet, caring individuals who just wanted to help people, and Ian Brady and Myra Hindley completely took advantage of this and of their innocence. I hope and pray to the God above that Ian Brady and Myra Hindley went on the elevator to hell, which we know that they would have. They're not going up to the Golden Gates, we know that. Down in hell, I hope they're burning, and I hope that they are facing torture for all eternity. But my loves, this is the end of the case of Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, the Moors murders. I know this is a hard case to listen to, but I feel like it's so important to cover it, and I don't want to shy away from cases just because they're hard. I said when I started my channel that I didn't want to do child cases because they're too hard, they're too devastating, and they're too painful. But recently I've been thinking, well, this is exactly why we need to cover them though, because people like Myra Hindley and Ian Brady still exist, and they are still doing this to innocent children out there. It needs to be stopped, and people need to be aware and, you know, look for the signs, look after each other, look out for others' children, make sure that everyone is kept safe. But I do hope this case was interesting, and I really hope I was able to do it some justice for the poor victims and those victims' families who have lost such an important part of their household and their life and part of them. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to my channel. Put the notification bell on so you don't miss when I upload, which is every Wednesday and Sunday at 7:30 p.m. British Standard Time. If you have any case suggestions, you can leave them in the comments below or send them to my email. In the description below, you will also find the details of the products used on my face today, in case there's anything that you want to have a look at or purchase for yourself. But that's everything for today. Be a good person, don't be a bad person, stay safe and look after each other, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!